Welcome to our 15th episode of our second series of the surnames and early families of Appalachia and the South. Before we get started, I want to point out that there are several reasons why a person might not be genetically related to the first people who bore the surname that one carries. A little thought tells us that the adoption of babies, name changes, or hanky-panky in the old barn loft can mess up the genetic details, but maybe not your cultural background. If it's okay with you, I'm going to respect these names and families as though they're your kin, and mine too for that matter. With that out of the way, all the names that are covered on the Vanntage Point were requested and have been confirmed to be Civil War or Antebellum families. You might be wondering why I don't research post-Civil War families, and that's a good question. Well, it's because a person my age most likely knows the original homeland of their great-grandparents or their great-great-grandparents. Also, I may not show all the spelling variations for each name, so please note that in preliterate societies, phonics or sounding out names worked well for them, and of course I've got my own accent biases. I hope you'll join me. Number 1, Tennant, or Tennant. Every source that I consulted researching this family name led me to France during the time in which Old French was spoken. That takes us back to the 8th century. Maybe a little bit after that, but certainly back as far as the 8th century. As they say in late night TV commercials, wait, there's more. It's found in England as early as 1150. If you've watched the channel more than a few times, you would most likely have a good idea who introduced the name to Great Britain. What's that? Did you say the Normans? Well, that would be my conclusion as well. As we've also found, Norman lords were keen to acquire lands for farming, but they weren't going to do the dirty work themselves. God forbid. No. They wanted a labor source, so they acquired local rule of the population that occupied the noble's estate. Those folks were called peasants, and they exchanged their labor for the privilege of living on the lord's estate and for receiving his protection. Many of the Norman nobles were granted lands in England and later in the Scottish lowlands. The Tennant or Tennant family was one such family of farmers, which is what the name meant. In terms of the early folks with that name in Appalachia and the South, I found a man named Richard Tennant. He was born in Glasgow, Scotland in 1744, but he ventured across the cold waters of the Atlantic and settled in Virginia, where he met and married Elizabeth Halt. She was born in 1748 and passed on in 1830. Richard preceded her in death in 1822. There was another bloke from Scotland named William Tennant. He immigrated to America and established a backcountry school of theology in Pennsylvania in 1727. It was called the Log College. Its mission was to educate Presbyterian clergy for Scotch-Irish settlers and other communities in the backcountry. You might find this interesting. The Log College grew into the College of New Jersey and then Princeton University. While the surname could be English, it looks like many of the folks in Appalachia and the South are of Scottish origin. Number 2, Yount. As an old baseball player, I immediately thought of Robin Yount, a retired shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers. He was born in Illinois in 1955, but were there any Younts in the South or Appalachia? According to the Yount family papers that are housed in the library of the University of Virginia, Joseph Yount was born in York County, Pennsylvania in 1765 to Swiss immigrants Rudolph Yount and Frances Schaffner Yount. She was Yount when she got married. She wasn't born a Yount, she got married. In 1794, the year that Tennessee became a state, Joseph Yount moved to Rockingham County, Virginia, with his parents and 2 brothers. After his marriage to Elizabeth Bowman in 1798, Joseph bought a farm in Augusta County where the young couple began to establish their family. In my video on what an American should know before driving in Switzerland, I discussed the 4 major languages and culture areas in the landlocked mountainous country. The largest area is Swiss German. The Yount name is an anglicized form of the German Yount, so at the end of the day, I'm confident that our southern Yount families came from the German-Swiss region in Switzerland. Number 3, Booher. Booher. According to a 1934 publication titled Pennsylvania German Pioneers, a publication of the original lists of arrivals in the port of Philadelphia from 1727 to 1808. Boy, what a title is that. The Booher name is an Americanized form of the German name Booher, which is pretty much pronounced the same way. Its origin is confirmed by other sources like the Dictionary of American Family Names. It could mean a dweller by a forest or a woodsman. Like Yount, that we just discussed, the family came straight to America. No stopping off in Ireland or somewhere like that. They may have stopped to switch boats or something, but they didn't live there. The earliest Booher that I could find was John Baltus Booher and his wife Katharina Hartman, who first settled in Pennsylvania in, I'm not sure when they did there, but they had a son who was born there in 1744. His name was John. He died in 1826. Members of the family joined other poor farmers in migrating southwest down the Great Wagon Road that cut through the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia and eventually settled in Sullivan County, Tennessee. Quite a few members of this family later moved to Kentucky. At the end of the day, I'm confident that your family came from Germany. Number 4, Hawk or Hauk. I think we have our first today, gang. Yes, indeed. This is the first time that we've had 3 German names back to back. So that's pretty cool, I think. It's a variation of the personal name Hugo, that is, Hauk is, and its English equivalent is Hugh. On November 22nd, 1746, Johann Peter Hauk, who was 26 at the time, along with his 25-year-old wife, Anna Marie Schwender Hauk, began a family in Berks County, Pennsylvania. Their presence in the South is not that clear to me. I couldn't find a whole lot on that. However, Hauk is an Antebellum family, so I went ahead and researched it. Hauk could be an anglicization of Hauk, or yeah, it could be, but not necessarily, because it could be English with deeper roots in Scandinavia. That means there could be at least one Viking sitting and hopefully not hanging from a branch in your tree. Looking closer to home, Henry Hauk was born around 1761 in Hampshire, Virginia. His father was Isaac Hawks and his mother was Mary Barton. Got Bartons in my family tree as well. In fact, my 5th great-grandmother, one of my 5th great-grandmothers was Elizabeth Barton. Her father was Joshua Barton, who was a preacher that went to Boonesboro, Kentucky and was killed in an Indian attack. That's beside the point. They were in their mid-30s when Henry was born, so he probably wasn't the firstborn baby. He's probably a middle baby or maybe a late baby for them. Henry married Alicia Beatty in Virginia around 1784. I think you'll need a paper trail to determine if your line traces back to England and the Vikings or to Germany. Folks, I would love to cover more names today, but I'm traveling this week. I need to start packing, if you know what I mean. Now, if you'd like a list of the names and families that we've covered so far here on the Vanntage Point, please write to me at vantagepoint22@gmail.com and I will send you a list as a PDF file. Until I see you again, may the good Lord bless and keep you. May He make His face shine on you and give you grace. Bye-bye.